Welcome to New Home Insights, the podcast from John Burns Research Consulting. I'm your host, Dean Worley. If you want to follow market trends, demographics, capital, new ideas, and endeavors that touch on housing, we're going to try to make sense of that every couple of weeks. Let's go. Hey everyone, this is Dean Worley with the New Home Insights podcast. It has been a couple of minutes since we last covered build to rent and the single family rental world here on the podcast. So we have some catching up to do a little bit, and we are going to do that with Josh Hartmann. He is the CEO of NexMetro, one of the biggest, maybe the biggest BTR builder in the country. Josh, how you doing?
Doing great, Dean. Happy to be here.
So first of all, Josh, let's start with just a little bit about you, your journey to NexMetro and what you do here at NexMetro, and then we'll go right into the meat.
Yeah, I'll try and make it relatively brief. But the way I came here, so my background, civil engineer, I'm not a finance guy. I started out as construction, project manager. Early in my career, I transitioned from consulting over to master plan community development. So my first community was Estancia here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's actually in Peoria. It's about a 7,000 acre master plan. Fell in love with development, all things related to construction. And I decided that was what I wanted to do with the rest of my career. And after a few years on Estancia, I was recruited by Pulte Group to work on a master plan for them. This was back in the early days when it was crazy. When I think about it now, I was like 30 years old. I had like $1 billion budget, 4,000 acre master plan.
Wow. And
I'm like designing all this stuff. It's like insanity. Probably it will never happen again. We're still getting back to getting master plans.
I know.
And then, we'll see. I mean, hopefully, I think master plans are fantastic.
I agree. We've had a lot of master plan here. I think they still add value, but yeah, that size, it just gets harder to do things of that size and scope.
I'll tell you, so Estancia is a 7,000 acre master plan. I started on it in 2001. I was there before it, about 6 months before we broke ground, and then about 2 or 3 years in after you delivered 2 phases. That project's still under construction. That was 24 years ago.
Well, that's Arizona though. If it was California, you'd be starting like in Star Trek days.
Oh yeah, exactly. We haven't even started yet, right? So moved on, went to Pulte, and then in 2000, I was there specifically for one project. Then obviously the GFC comes. For me, it was in 2008. For a lot of the world, it was 2009. Made it through that. And then in about 2010, 12, I was looking for a new product for Del Webb. We're looking for like a lock and leave product that might work for the active adult community. And I stumbled upon this product that was being built, just getting built in Tucson, Arizona. That was this single story detached, kind of a single family home, kind of an apartment in terms of management, single family in terms of product. And one of my planning consultants brought it to me, and I said, "Man, this is really cool." He said, "Do you think that Pulte would ever build it?" I said, "No chance." Right? There's no attached garages. Yeah. It's just too out there. And at that time, as you probably recall, Dean, all the builders were like simplifying, right? Yeah. Less plans, less different products, all that kind of stuff. But I thought it was really interesting. So fast forward 3 or 4 months later, serendipity, I get a phone call from the guys that are doing this down in Tucson. And they say, "Hey, we're looking for someone that has experience in kind of at scale, comes from corporate America where, just processes are a little bit stronger. We want to start this company called NexMetro with this cool product that we've developed in Tucson. What do you think?" And I was like, this is like a dream, right? Yeah. I mean, I've always wanted to start my own company. I actually get to start a company with people that I've done it a few times. All my partners are, I don't want to say a lot older than me, but they're older than me. So I get the benefit of learning from them. And that's where NexMetro started. And from there, we jumped into Phoenix pretty quickly and then moved across the country. That's my background.
Those heady early days where we didn't even know what to call it yet. There still was a BFR, is it BTR? There's a debate. But you are now at, 50, how many, tell me, 60 plus communities?
We're over 60 communities. We're almost 65 communities at this point. Almost 11,000 homes across the U.S. We're in 7 markets. This year we're delivering, we have 2,400 units under construction right now. We'll start 10 projects, about 2,000 units this year, and we'll do a little bit more than that next year. So we're continuing to grow, even though the market's a little bit challenging right now, but and it's all the same product. I think one of the keys to our success is we've got a product that we believe in. We've stuck with it. We're not trying to do different products, and we're just evolving that product to try and perfect it over time. But it makes it a little bit easier for me, coming from the master plan world. If we're building different homes all the time, I'd have to be way more involved in design. But because we're building the same product, it's just rinse and
Yeah.
repeat over and over again, and our customers love it.
We'll talk more about that in a bit. In fact, I should tell the
Yeah.
listeners. So Josh and I are going to talk a little about markets and how he analyzes them. We're going to talk about product at a little more depth. Some of those keys, like the amenities, things like that he sees as being key to BTR success. And then we'll wrap it up with, hopefully, if time permits, we'll wrap it up with some discussion about his tenants and the nature and the characteristics of the tenant profile at their places. One more thing, though, before we talk about markets, is that my understanding is everything is marketed not as NexMetro, but as Avilla Homes. So Avilla Homes is your marketing brand name. Why did you choose to do that rather than NexMetro?
When we first started NexMetro, we thought we would do different products, right? So we thought Avilla Homes was going to be our product line, the cottage style multifamily, or cottage style BTR, whatever you want to call it. And so we thought we'd have multiple different products. Over time, obviously, we have one product. But if we did something different, we thought, Communities is kind of the parent company, and then Avilla Homes is the brand. And if we, say we did an active adult, Avilla style product, you want to rebrand it, that would still fall under the umbrella.
Okay. I had a secret question for you that we didn't talk about beforehand about that. So now you know it. So
Sure.
I'll ask you about that later. So, but you would brand under something different. You did something radically different from what you do now. Okay.
Right. We had this idea at the beginning. People thought we were crazy. We're like, well, we're going to have a brand. Like people are going to know Avilla. They're going to know if it's an Avilla, this is what it is.
Yeah.
I guess it's because I came from the home building world. That's kind of how I think about, at Pulte Group, we had Centex, we had Del Webb, we had Pulte, Homes. Okay. And so I thought of it the same way of like, we really want the consumer to know when they walk into an Avilla what they're getting.
Okay.
And that's how we built it. And a lot of people told us we'd never get any kind of value out of that, like that people just didn't care. And this is multifamily. But now we're finding, people do care, and it helps us with finding, new prospects. In fact, we have people that move across the country from one Avilla to the next because they know, hey, the Avilla in Tampa, Florida is going to be the same as this great Avilla community I live in Phoenix, Arizona. And it gives us that kind of universality for our product.
I think if you're super consistent and you keep at it, I'm curious. So 2012, you're Avilla. How long do you think it took before you had that brand recognition? My guess is it took a few years.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the kind of the evolution of the whole, the market is like, it wasn't until 2016 that you really started hearing kind of BTR.
Yeah.
And it was like, it'd be 2R.
Yes.
Yes.
I remember
BFR.
That. I did a poll.
What is it, right?
I did a poll once with a BTR. People with BTR, BFR, or being numeral 2R. And it seems like BT letter has won.
It seems to have won out. Yeah. So that was 2016. I would say even then we still kind of weren't like even recognized. I would say it feels like 2020, the pandemic was a turning point for us, because that's really where people were like, oh, this product makes total sense, right? You're not in a big building with everyone else. You're not walking down corridors like a garden style multi. You have your own kind of 4 walls of freedom. You have your own front door. I think that's when institutions finally recognized us as a kind of institutional class product. That's when we got recognized. Now, I would say BTR might have been discussed broadly before that, but I think the Avilla brand really got recognition right around 2020.
Okay.
Especially with the institutions, maybe with consumers in Phoenix a little earlier, because we had, we've got thousands of units here in Phoenix, so probably a little bit earlier, but I think it was really around then that we started to feel like we were getting some value.
And it'll probably take some time, and when you enter new markets or markets you've been in relatively recently, but still, if you're consistent, you always build something good, you have great service. Yeah, I totally think that brand can add value and just a sense of trust.
Yeah.
So let's talk about markets. You mentioned a minute ago, you're kind of in expansion mode. So you're still looking at markets right now. First, I want a 2-part question. Where you just give a groundwork of where you're at now for the listeners, that's a lot of these Sunbelt markets. And then, what drives you to where you look next? What are you thinking about when you're looking at potential expansion markets?
So the first part of your question, we're a suburban developer. So all these markets I'll mention, we're in the suburban markets. We're not in obviously the CBD. So Phoenix, Arizona. The next market we moved into was Dallas, Texas. We're in Dallas, Fort Worth. Then we moved into Denver, Colorado. Then to where do we go next? Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
Then to Austin, Texas, and then to Atlanta. So those are the markets we're in currently. We have a project in Austin. I'm sorry, in Augusta, Georgia, but that's kind of a one-off.
Okay.
I would say the others are kind of our core markets. The way it sounds like BS, but if I showed you the original business plan for NexMetro, we had a demographic study done or a market study done for that, and we had I think 18 markets, or maybe it was 20 markets in that study. All the markets I just mentioned were in it.
Okay.
And we basically said, okay, let's look at current economic factors. Right. And at that time, we didn't have data on who the Avilla customer was. We just had apartments. So it was really if I showed you it, nothing would shock you, right? Yeah. It was, hey, what's job growth? Where's job growth? Where's in-migration? Where's all those types of things? Looking at those markets, and then we ranked them based on current and then future projection. And obviously, future projection is the gray area, right? No one ever exactly knows what that is. Those are the markets that we grew into, and those markets never really changed, and those are markets that we're in. And as we think about continued growth, we've layered on top of what I would call kind of macroeconomic, microeconomic, we've layered on the Avilla economic, right? And so who is our customer? What are their income levels? Where do they work? What's their background? All that kind of stuff. We've layered that on top of what I would call the more broad economic factors you look at when moving into a market. And then once we select the market, we do a more sub-market based, same kind of metrics, but looking at the sub-markets and saying, okay, where within this overall metroplex do we want to be, especially to start? And I would say once you're in the market and you get boots on the ground, every one of our markets that I mentioned, we have an office in, and we have a managing director that knows that market. Then you get a little bit more gut on like, hey, this is a good location. But as you're first getting in the market, it's like, do we want to be in, Northwest Atlanta, or do we want to be in Northeast Atlanta, or where do we want to be as we start? Just because that's the biggest thing when you enter into a new market as an organically, kind of organically growing into that market, is you get kind of homeboyed is the term that probably shouldn't use, but that's the one I'm going to use. Is
say that again.
You get homeboyed a little bit. Okay. You get every project that you get sent when you first get into a market and you start meeting with the brokers. Like every project they give you, it's been around. Everyone's looked at it, and everyone who knows what they're doing is passed on it.
They want you to pay that traditional dump tax.
Yeah, you got to pay the dump tax, right? You got to pay the dump tax of like, oh, you didn't know that we have, turtles that you have to do a survey for, and whatever. But having that kind of market study or sub-market study at least lets us know this is kind of where we want to be. Yeah. So somebody can't kind of lead us astray in that regard. So that's how we think about it. I always say with NexMetro, we try and lead with data, and then eventually you have to kind of get boots on the ground, and then eventually you've got to have a little bit of intuition, that comes from the experience in the market, and to really identify the right locations.
You mentioned Atlanta. Would you go to Flowery Branch just because it's the best named city in the history of the world?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no better reason. It's a beautiful community, but it's named Flowery Branch.
Flowery Branch? I mean, how could you not go there?
It's lovely. Would you do something? Would you go to a lower growth market? So obviously you have your target is set on those high growth areas, just like most folks are in this business. Would you go? Would it be something that would induce you to go to something, maybe a one-off or something else to go somewhere a little lower growth?
We would go with a partner, obviously. If we had a capital partner that really wanted us to go into a market, we would. We like some of the slightly more tertiary markets within the metros that we're in. So we might go a little further outside, or maybe, if there's a drive to, I'm trying to think of a great example of one that we've done. But nothing's coming to mind.
Yeah.
Like Weatherford, Texas, right? It's not really part of the Dallas Metroplex, but it has its own kind of, it's got its own draw. It's got a great economy in and of itself. And it's not that far from Dallas, but we're not going to do 4 projects there. We might do one project there, and it's going to be, hey, we'll do that. And then, because we're all about market depth, we want to do 600-700 units per year in every market that we're in, and you're just not going to do it in that market. And so now you're going to have a project over there, 250 units. You're not going to get the operational efficiency that you need. You may get the rents that you need, but you're not going to get the kind of efficiency you're going to get in Fort Worth, right? Where we've got 7 projects surrounding Fort Worth, and we can share resources amongst those projects. So we'll do it, but it's got to be a compelling business strategy around it, not just like, hey, we found this property and it's really cool. It's next to a HEB, right?
It's in Flowery Branch. We can't say no.
It's in Flowery Branch. It's got a great name. Like
I'm going to stop there because I don't need more reason. You're big on market intelligence and market research. Let me ask you something. I'm going to start with it, kind of a little bit of an esoteric question, but because there's a lot of a debate about this. When you're looking at a market, a new market, okay, when you're in Phoenix, you have in Dallas, place like that with tons of BTR. If you're looking at a market with not a lot of existing BTR, how do you treat those single family mom and pops versus apartments to tell you what the rental market is for BTR?
For our particular style of product, we look mostly to apartments.
Okay.
So because it's a little easier because they're more consistent.
Yeah.
So if I go to a Class A suburban garden style, I kind of know what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Right. But if I'm trying to compete against or compare against a single family home that's for rent, now I got to look at, what's the vintage? Has it been updated? Blah, 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 blah. So we typically rely pretty heavily on the Class A apartments in the area. And then we believe we get a premium to them, 15 to 20%.
Yeah.
We still do look at the rental housing just because we want to know what that stock is and what it looks like. And it will compete with us to some regard. Although I would say our demographics, and we'll talk about this later, they're not the same as single family rental.
Yeah.
And so we're probably a little closer, maybe closer to apartments, but I would say somewhere kind of in between.
And the thing we want to run into a lot is that the single family renter landlords are not price maximizing where the way Class A. So you do get this, I'm at this point, I'm kind of whining because I work in a lot of markets where there's not a lot of BTR and it's tough. It's difficult too. So you really do have to rely on more apartments, but then you have a bigger disconnect in terms of product than you do with the single family world, usually on BTR.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that would be a big complaint of my asset management team, that like, if you have a mom and pop operator, I don't care if it's on a single family home or on a multifamily product for that sake.
Yeah, true.
They just aren't maximizing price, and it's not that they have a bad strategy. It's just they have a different strategy, right? They're like, I'd rather not deal with the turnover and X, Y, and Z. And I like, and they tend to know their residents a little bit more, right? They because they have less residents that they're kind of working with. And so I get it, but it does make it more difficult. Sure.
Besides ranking markets and looking at exploring the potential for new markets, what else are you using market intelligence for on a more daily basis?
We survey everything, as you probably know, Dean. We survey our investors, right? So our investors are individual high net worth investors, family offices, et cetera. We do surveys with them every other year and understand what do they like about our investment products and what do they not like and what things are they looking for that we don't have, et cetera. We do the same thing for our residents. We are starting to kind of dip our toes a little bit into business intelligence and AI in terms of looking at trying to predict. It's business intelligence versus just understanding what you have.
Okay.
Right? That's kind of step one, cleaning up your data. And then can you start to predict things based on what you're seeing? So can we predict based on the demographics, what rents we're going to be able to achieve, what areas are going to have higher rents than others? And I'll tell you, using data to me is a way to eliminate bias. So, I think we had a project here in Phoenix. I'll just give an example of, we almost didn't do it because, I've been in Phoenix 30 years. My chief development officer is a lifetime. He's an Arizonan. It's like second or third generation. And so this particular area, we're just like, it's not the best area of Phoenix, right? But then we ran the numbers and we're like, man, these demographics look pretty solid, right? And kept on coming back to it and looking at it. Finally said, okay, let's just, it's a smaller project. Let's just do it. Ended up being the best performing project we've ever done.
Yeah.
Right. And so you kind of got to let the numbers lead you and then question your own biases as you're looking at the numbers and saying, oh, we shouldn't do this deal. Like, that's the wrong side of the tracks. And then, you keep looking at the numbers going, but the numbers look fantastic. And you have to keep in mind who your customer is, right? It's because everyone wants to tell you how to run your business, how to build your product, how to, where you should be, where you shouldn't be. And at the end of the day, it only matters that those people telling you that are your residents.
Yeah.
Right? Who are really the ones that need to be happy and satisfied. And, I love my bankers, but they're not renting a villas, right? And so we try and let that data eliminate our bias as much as we can.
That's a great life lesson, period, or in all walks of life. Confirmation bias is the most real bias in the human brain. Let data and let your actual experience and let the awareness that you do have confirmation bias guide you away from confirmation bias. I love that.
Yeah. 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 I have friends who have rented from us, and I just ask them what they think. Not
The plural of anecdote is data, as we all know. So that's fine. In recent years, it seems like rental household growth, in fact, it is true that rental household growth has surpassed for sale world in terms of growth rates. Are you pretty optimistic for that reason? Do you see that continuing? Do you see the rental market kind of outpacing for sale for some fairly obvious reasons in the near to midterm?
It's, the question is, what could possibly reduce the cost of housing to make it more competitive with renting?
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I'm not an anti-ownership person. When I talk to my nieces and nephews, I don't have kids, but when I talk to my nieces and nephews and they say, "Do you think I should buy?" I'm like, absolutely, you should buy if you're going to live someplace for more than 3 to 5 years and you can afford it, right? It's a way to build equity, all those things, but it's just not affordable,
Yeah.
right? And so I was talking with someone last week, private equity group, and they asked me, what do you think could drive down the cost of housing to the point where it become affordable? And I honestly can't come up with anything other than rates, right? I mean, obviously, if somehow rates can get back to where mortgages go back down in the threes,
Yeah. It'd have to be a lot.
okay,
Yeah.
it's a lot,
Yeah.
right? It's a lot. And so it's hard to imagine people being driven more towards housing just because it's not achievable. I mean, and hey, I wish it was, right? I have plenty of friends that are trying to buy houses, and I wish they would be able to buy houses, and it's not attainable, unfortunately. And I'm not sure that there's a solution either through the government or through private, industry to really drive down that cost of housing. I haven't seen in my career. I haven't seen. I mean, well, maybe one time that the cost of housing came down substantially. It didn't go well for pretty much anybody.
You guys are, so you're constantly monitoring the market specific to BTR. What do you think market rents? I mean, do you see market rents for BTR specifically kind of staying positive? What do you see that of the near term?
Well, I always have to kind of, I always want to bifurcate a little bit because the single family rental housing industry, I think, has seen kind of pretty steady rent growth over the past few years. The SFR, which whether it's their BTR portfolio or their traditional, kind of bought here and there housing, we have been pretty flat at Avilla for the last 3 years. I mean, maybe a percent up, a percent down, right? But pretty flat. So I think that I feel like in our business, we're teed up for a bunch of growth. I think there's going to be some kind of pop in rents on what I would call the cottage style BTR in the near term, just because we've been pent up for 3 years. And I get it. We had, double digit rent growth back in 2021, but we're now back on the long-term trajectory of rents. And so maybe you dip a little bit and come back up. I think traditional single family rental BTR, I think it's just going to keep on trucking at that, 2, 3, 4% for a long time. And it actually, kind of getting back to our discussion earlier about the mom and pops, that fits their business model a little bit better as well, right? Turn is a little bit more difficult with the traditional scattered site, SFR or BTR. And so I think they are a little bit more measured in their rent growth, whereas we're managing our assets more like an apartment. Right? When things are good, you're pushing rents. And
in the SFR world too, I wonder if it doesn't dampen the potential downturn where the rest of the market is going down. SFR though, when because they haven't been maximizing for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, when that new thing comes up, they don't have to cut that rate to be at the market. They can still increase it and still be below the market. So
they're still below market a little bit, so they can kind of keep on marching up those rents. And I think that they've got a good business around it. I mean, sometimes I admire the SFR, the REITs. It's just like, it's still great to just be able
to bank on 2 or 3%.
Always up and to the right. It's just fantastic. Great business.
Before we talk about product, I'm going to one more thing on kind of capital, a little bit different. Didn't really fit anywhere, so I thought I'd ask you now. I think you guys recently recapitalized at NexMetro. So I wanted to use that as a way to ask you what I've been asking everybody in the rental world lately is the multifamily capital environment going to improve anytime soon?
I would tell you the debt market is as good as it's been in 5 years.
Okay.
There's a lot of availability of debt, both from debt funds. Everyone's trying to place pref equity, which in my world that essentially is debt, or it's placed as
Okay.
mezz on top of traditional. So there's a lot of debt out there right now, and it's very competitive. The recap that we did earlier this year was at a better rate than we had in place at the time. Plus, we were able to get a cash out for our investors. So that part of the market is very strong, and there's a lot of dry powder chasing it right now. On the equity side, it's been a slog. Whether you're raising institutional capital or you're raising, like we do, high net worth in family offices, we probably have a little bit of an advantage because of the diversity of our investor pool, right? If you're an individual high net, we have 250 individual high net worth investors. Some are nervous and are not investing, but there's always those that are like, this is the time to invest, right? And are more contrarian, which is kind of how my mindset is.
Yeah.
When everyone else is scared, that's when I want to
Yeah.
rock and roll, right? And when people are getting a little fluffy, that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
So we've seen
I like fluffy rather than like,
yeah.
That's going to take over. Okay.
The fluffy, yeah, boy, the fluffy. But I think that it's been tough, but we're starting to see some kind of green shoots on investors coming back. And the problem is, because the market's been pretty flat, especially in multifamily for the past 3 years, no one's been selling. There's not been a lot of transaction volume. You are recapping, but a lot of times you're just trying to recap into a better cost of capital, or maybe, a little bit of a better position, but there's not a lot of distribution. So the comment that we see, whether with our investors or with institutions or people that I know that raise capital from institutions, are like, I need to see some recycling of my capital, right? I need to see some funds coming back before I'm ready to redeploy back into real estate, even though I agree with all of the position that, like, listen, rents have been stale for 3 years. They've got to start growing. Cap rates are starting to come down, all these positive things. There's tons of dry powder. Everyone agrees with that. But at the end of the day, you look at your account and you're like, I'm heavily weighted in real estate because I haven't had any distribution. So I can't make another investment until I start to see that. That's what we've been experiencing. And I think that's pretty ubiquitous across the market, whether it's institutional or private capital.
It does, when that distribution sorts itself out, though, it does seem like the fundamentals are there for a pop in availability for sure in capital.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the other part I didn't mention is, like, right, the decrease in starts, right? So we all know in the industry that 2 years from now there's going to be a shortage of housing. I mean, there's a shortage of housing now, technically.
Yeah.
It's just we had a lot coming at one time, so at that moment it's having trouble absorbing, and I think we're past that.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 years from now, I can't see how we don't have a kind of a really challenge with availability of housing, whether single family and multifamily, but certainly on the multifamily side, and so that means values are going to go up because people like new, right? So that's why we continue to build.
Rental demand has been actually pretty darn solid. It's just that, like you said, that spate of supply that we've had that is now winding down pretty rapidly has, made it uncomfortable in some markets for the larger rental markets there in some MSAs. That's quickly coming to an end, though. So we'll see.
Yeah. And you've been around as long as I have. It's like real estate cyclical, right? It's like you gotta have longevity in real estate. It's not a get in, get out business. And so as long as you can hold on through the downtimes, you get the benefit of the uptimes. And I think they're right around the corner. But we all said it was going to be 2025. I think we were kind of stealing that from the 90s, and it's like survive till 25.
Yeah.
Rhymed well, but didn't work out that way. And now we got to come up with a new rhyme for 2026. But hopefully,
26. Okay, I don't know. You put me in that spot here. I can't think of anything off that. Stay in the mix until 26. That was too easy.
There you go. Perfect.
I don't like it. Let me workshop that. So let's talk about product. You mentioned a minute ago, you do what you call this cottage style BTR offering. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it's very similar, if not perfect, almost the same for every Avilla branded community that you do. Is that right? And B, describe that product.
Yeah. So all of our we do a 1, 2, and 3 bedroom home. The 1 bedroom's 1 bath, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom are 2 baths. They're single story detached. Our 1 bedroom is 650. I'm going to round 650 square feet, done in a duplex. Again, single story with a yard, etc. 2 bedrooms about 1,000 square feet. 3 bedroom is about 1,250 square feet.
Okay. When
we change the floor plan, in home building, you talk about production building, line building. We've kind of perfected it because we don't have to make any changes to the actual homes as we build them. So we're not taking, hey, the home buyer selected this option, so we got to do this build out here, right? The 1, 2, and 3 bedroom floor plan are identical everywhere we build it. And when we roll out every 2 years, we do a survey of our residents and we say, what do you like? What don't you like? We make changes to our floor plans to address that. For example, we added a pantry on our 1 bedroom a couple of years ago, things like that. Once we decide on that new floor plan, we roll it all across all of our markets. And so if you flew to Tampa and walked into our 2 bedroom and then flew back to Phoenix, or flew to Phoenix and walked into our 2 bedroom in Phoenix or our villa, identical inside. The only thing that really changes is the wrapper outside that makes it fit in with the neighborhood. Obviously in Phoenix, it's more stucco, and in Denver, it's hardy board, that kind of thing. And then similarly with we take it even to our leasing offices. So we have a leasing office that sits at the front of the community. It's just an office with a little kitchenette and a waiting area. And our leasing agent has an office in there that's attached to our pool. And the pool, has a hot tub and all these things. Like, we take literally that setup, and we'll take it project to project. We'll just set the same pool, layout. The same layout, the same building, project to project to project, and it just makes it super efficient.
And they're kind of 4-pack with paseos, but it looks like they always have some kind of a backyard space, right?
They always have a backyard. Yeah. Yep. It's the backyard is nominally 10 foot deep. It's the width of the house. The houses are more, I describe it. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin in a ranch style home. Mm-hmm. Our homes are more kind of ranch style. They're wider than they are deep.
Okay.
But they all have a backyard. They all have a front patio. You're correct. They kind of are built in these courtyards.
Yeah.
Which kind of helps for that. You kind of know your neighbors in your courtyard. Parking is like a traditional garden style apartment. Yeah. So we have carports. It's like a looping. It's a fire lane or a parking lane. With carports, and then we have individual 4-pack garages that you can lease for additional. So there's no attached garages in any of our communities. And that basically is our model across everywhere we build, anywhere from, we're 10 to 20 acres. Well, let's say 10 to 30 acres, between 120 and 300 homes in a neighborhood. Typically gated, not always gated, just depends on what what the local jurisdiction likes or doesn't like.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about parking in a minute again, but before I do that, I want to ask you about densification and density. What is your typical density in dwelling units per acre? And I apologize for that being inside baseball for some of our listeners, but what densities do you typically achieve?
We 10 to 12 units per acre.
Okay.
I would say we're probably closer to 10 these days. We have, as we've evolved the product, we've kind of gotten a little less dense, but not substantially. It used to be closer to 12. But I would say 10 to 12 per acre.
How big usually are your communities in terms of number of units?
The average is 200 units, 200 homes, anywhere from 100 to 300.
So they're pretty sizable. They're amenitized. They're carport parked. How do you differentiate yourself and market yourself as different from Class A apartments? I mean, obviously it's the above and below, but how do you sort of handle that against apartments as competition?
It's 4 walls of freedom. You've got, you don't have any neighbors above you, below you, beside you. You've got, all the rooms in your house are going to have windows looking outside. You've got a backyard. You don't get that in a garden style apartment.
Yeah.
If you've got a pet, which 50% of our residents do, you're not putting on your house slippers to take them for a walk and then having to, bring a plastic thing to pick it up with your hand, which is fantastic. You've got a backyard, but we maintain it all, right? So it's just like a garden style apartment. So I would tell you that we've built several projects directly adjacent to a Class A garden. In fact, we bought a property from a Class A garden developer in Denver. And at first they wouldn't even accept our offer. And I literally sent them our demographic study for that project and said, this is our customer. And the owner called me up and said, you know what, we're going to sell it to you. That's not your customers and our customer, right? Our customers are a little higher income.
Yeah.
Little bit, like a little older, they have pets, they have these things. They don't have kids, not that apartment residents have kids a lot, but it's a continuum. I tell people, it's a continuum, right? It's like you're in an apartment in college, then you move into an apartment after you graduate, then you can move it into a villa. Now you're getting closer to living in a traditional single family home. And then you move into a single family home, whether you rent it or buy it, depending on, where you want to be in life. But our customer is different than either of those, which is why I like our product. I think it's unique and has a unique customer base.
And so it yields, like you mentioned a minute ago, but I'm asking you getting out to make sure we have it clarified, is that premium above apartments. And when we're analyzing and we use apartments as comps, one of the trickiest things is that the home sizes are usually often radically different. In your case, you have home sizes that are not altogether very different from like bedroom counts in the apartment world. So you're a great example. What is that approximate premium you get over just a garden style apartment complex next door?
Yeah, garden style, I would say 15 to 25% over, just depending. And we look at a lot of different factors in it, but I would say that's a good average. And then our brand, I would say our brand advantage, I talked about it a little bit earlier. I mean, I would say our brand advantage is anywhere from 5 to 10% of that.
Okay.
So even if we're comping against other, garden or
BTRs,
cottage style BTR, we still have a little bit of a premium over that. I think I give that credit to our property management partners and our portfolio management team. I just think they deliver a better lifestyle and better experience. But yeah, if you're just looking at traditional garden, we're probably 15 to 20. I would say 15 to 20. Sometimes it's 25, but
is part of that brand the always on-site maintenance like an apartment complex? Is that a pretty important part of what you do?
It is. So early on, we've been doing this for 15 years now. And early on, we had a thesis that we could just get rid of all of our ons. In fact, the earliest Avillas did not have leasing offices.
Okay.
That's something we started in 2014 because we realized that our residents liked being able to go to a leasing office and meet with the leasing, the property manager. And also we have on-site maintenance. And so there's also provides, that just accessibility. I don't, we're trying different things now on reducing, like, does someone really have to sit in that office all day? Or can we have them cover a couple of projects? But that comes down to, you have to have enough projects, right? So
it's true.
So because we train our property management team specifically for a villa. So we can't just pull somebody off of a traditional garden style and say, okay, now today you're doing a villa, and tomorrow you're going back to garden style. It's a little bit different sales process and experience. I think we'll always have the ability to have people on site. Can we have them a little bit more flexible? If we have 2,000 units in a market, can we share resources? Probably. But I think, and a lot of people still want that human connection, right? They'll self-tour. They'd like the idea of going after work and they don't have to deal with a leasing agent and they can go in and tour the models. But once they decide they want to lease, a lot of times having a real person facilitate it makes it a little bit more efficient, especially because we do have 20% of our residents are the 55 plus, who definitely do want to interact with someone, right? And I think, and then, another 20% is kind of between 35 and 55, the Gen Xers kind of thing. They also, in some cases, like to interact with people.
Do you see that becoming less true as we start to have more of the younger generations being more acclimated to doing everything on an app? Do you think that'll change?
Man, I tell you, every time we think we have that figured out, it seems to change, right? I mean, I'm just starting to hear like Gen Alpha, they like in-person experiences, right? They're somewhat driving some of the resurgence of malls and things like that. So
but they think TikTok is a personal interaction. So I'm not 100%. I'm just kidding. Sorry, generation. I apologize to that generation.
Yeah, no. I think that I don't know. I mean, you're always going to have somebody on site to do maintenance, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay. And then do you need to have someone on to just kind of, I mean, we know this from all aspects of anything that's residential. It's like, if you have an HOA, right, in a for sale neighborhood and the HOA people never show up, what happens in that neighborhood? It looks like garbage, right? And things don't get taken care of and you have problems and whatever. So you got to have a presence, just how much presence. It's a good question as to how much is the right amount, and it'll probably change over time.
But then if the the people who want to be elected to an HOA board do show up, it's awful because they're mostly awful people. So, sorry.
I tell you, when I was at Pulte, I managed 26 HOAs, and that was,
oh my God, that would be, that's why you're at NexMetro. That's plenty of reason.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that didn't enter my mind as I was leaving the for sale home building. I was like,
nothing else to do with their tiny amount of power. Parking. Before we go to these kind of keys and amenities, I want to talk about one more thing on product, which is parking. You have the carport parking, apartment-like parking. What made you go with that rather than attached garages?
Honestly, it was a product, right? So the product doesn't lend itself to attached garages
Mm.
because we have the 4-pack and you've got
Yeah.
2 in the back and 2 in the front. You really no way you could do that. You
I
know,
mean, you could. There's courtyard with parking. It's very
yeah,
very garage centered courtyard kind of a thing would be the
right,
closest
right.
analog, I guess.
Yeah. Usually ends up being 2-story though, right?
Yes, that's true. That's true. Because that,
Oftentimes,
yeah.
and we like to single story.
Okay.
So we just never, we've thought about it. We definitely have had those discussions and said, is there a way we could add garages to certain units? But it doesn't, we'd have to come up with a new product type.
Yeah.
And we're somewhat adverse to new product types. We're just like, we've got a good mousetrap. Let's stick with
I
the
see.
mousetrap. And if someone else, it's not like we're having a shortage of market, right? Like we've got plenty of people wanting to rent from us. And so
Yeah.
you kind of like let somebody else try something. It becomes a town. I mean, townhomes are a good option, right? If you're, or there are groups out there that are doing like 2-story for rent, like detached
Oh,
homes with garages. I mean, that's out there, and we kind of watch the market and see which ones look interesting. But oftentimes, what we see is our chunk rents are the same as theirs, even though they're larger, right? And so
yeah.
their
Oh,
cost per square foot versus their rent per square foot is not that compelling.
yeah. But does it impact your tenant profile in the sense of like I could see maybe like single females being a little bit, they might like the attached directness, the security of attached garage a little
Yeah.
more, or does it have any impact like that?
Um, I think it could have an impact. I will tell you that 2/3 of our residents that we, yeah, I need to be clear, like 2/3 of our residents are female of people who report what their sexual orientation is. And so it's not like we're definitely capturing more females in our product, but I think that's kind of a situation where if your other option is an apartment, versus, uh, versus us, like I'd rather have my 4 walls of freedom than being in an apartment. In the
Yeah.
apartment, I don't have a
Okay.
garage, right? So I think it's more of an issue if you're moving from a traditional home and you're downsizing into something. You may pass on a villa because you're like, I really want to have that
Yeah.
attached garage.
That
Yeah,
makes
right.
sense.
I'm
That
used to
makes
it.
sense. Okay.
Yeah, but
Let's talk a little bit about sort of those keys for success. And let's start with amenities. You're always amenitized. What are those amenities you just would never consider not including in an Avila community?
ugh, I never say never. I think that I mean, in a villa, there's a pool, there's a hot tub, there's a right, there's kind of a luxury resort pool. We always have a dog park. Our residents, we have a high percentage of people with pets, so we always want to have a dog park. Um, I mean, we kind of think of our homes as somewhat of the amenity, right? And that they're single story detached. We have lots of debates as to whether we would go 2-story, we should go 2-story or not, especially as the cost of land continues to increase and like we can get a little bit more square footage if we go 2-story. But I think that what we consider an amenity is the fact that all of our homes are single story. So no one's behind you looking into your backyard. When you're in your backyard, it's private. Privacy is the number one thing that our residents desire. And I think that has a lot to do with the detached house, your own front door that you're walking to from your parking space. You got your own backyard. So our amenity is really that home. And so we don't have a ton, like we don't do clubhouses. We've researched that. Our residents have told us that they're not interested in clubhouses. We do, if we get larger, closer to 300 units, we typically will do a pavilion of some sort or a gathering area. We won't do another pool. In the beginning, we did the 2-pool thing, and there wasn't a lot of value there. So now it's kind of like, hey, we more gathering space. If you want to have an event, we'll do like an event lawn, that kind of thing. But that's really, we fall back on what do our resident surveys tell us that they're looking for, and we try and add those. Like the last survey, not enough storage on the property, and people didn't like that they couldn't rent garages and put storage in them. So we added individual storage lockers on the ends of our garages, right? And some people would consider that an amenity, right? I have more, I can rent an additional little storage space to store my stuff that I don't need to have in my house. So we're pretty practical, quite frankly, with our amenities. And I think that we're never going to be able to, never say never, but I don't think we want to provide the same type of amenity you find in a traditional garden style. That's like just a wowza, amenity package, because that's really not what we're selling. We're selling what we think is the better lifestyle of the single story detached home. And so we kind of just try and focus on that.
I think you just answered it, but would you consider, do you expand or contract your amenity package given the community size? Like, I think you just, in 300, you might consider something more. Would you consider the opposite? Would you consider a lesser level of amenities for a relatively small community?
I think what we'd end up with is a pool, a leasing office, and that's it.
Okay.
Right. And it'd be pretty tightly packed. I do think, I think you can get away without a leasing office, probably. And I'm sure there's groups out there that are doing it, but I don't know. It feels a little odd to me to not have like, this is the place you go to if you need to talk to leasing. If you have a unit that has a home that has that you set up like a sales office, right? It's just like other homes where you've got the garage is an office or something like that. It's like, well, are you ever going to use that? Like you might as well just have a leasing office. And I kind of, from the beginning, said I'd rather build a 400 square foot leasing office that we use it as almost an amenity. Our leasing office is the only two-story building on the property. So when you pull in, you know where to go, right? That big building over there.
Yeah.
And it's only like 400 square feet. And you have to have bathrooms because you have a pool. So you put the bathrooms with the leasing office, and now you've got like a reasonably sized building. And you put your mailboxes right there. So it's kind of like your little gathering area of the community. I like having it. I'm sure you can get away without it, but I don't see us getting rid of it anytime soon.
You're always very suburban. Have you ever considered urban? And if you did consider urban and the land's a little, more expensive on a whatever per acre per square foot basis, would you consider having no amenities, like a no amenity urban-y kind of a community?
I would consider it. It wouldn't be in a villa, right?
Okay.
So that would be, hey, if we want to develop a new product type, and we would, as we always do, we would start with data, right? We would say, okay, we're gonna go more urban and infill. Who are we targeting? What product doesn't exist that maybe needs to exist, or maybe what product exists but we don't think it's being executed well?
Yeah.
Let's do research on who that customer is. How can we maximize the product for the customer? So we would kind of start from the beginning and develop the product for that. What I don't like doing is, and we won't do this, is you find a piece of property you really like it, you tie it up, you try and get Avilla approved through zoning. You can't get it approved, but they'll let you do townhomes.
Yeah.
Right. Or they'll let you do a garden stop or whatever. We do Avilla. That's what we do.
You just pass. Okay. You mentioned, so no one above or below you is a critical part of that premium. We talked about it a minute ago, and private outdoor space. I mean, is private outdoor space always a thing at Avilla? I think the answer is yes. And does that also drive your rents and drive your appeal?
Yeah. No, always. Every single Avilla home has a yard. Yes, so the way I like to think about it is, if you're leasing a garden style apartment, you get a premium for being on the bottom floor.
Yeah.
You get a premium for being on the top floor. You get a premium if you have a bigger balcony or by some miracle, a little yard.
Yeah.
We're putting all of those premiums in every single one of our Avilla homes. Yeah. You're always on the top floor. You're always on the bottom floor, and you always have a yard. And so that's where, if you think about it, I mean, hey, top floor premium, $150, bottom floor premium, $150, bigger yard, $100. So you take that $350, we're getting that extra $350 in every single Avilla home, which is probably pretty close.
Yeah.
Our average rents are $2,000 a month, right? So that's kind of where you get there.
Any other keys that people don't generally think of in terms of what makes you a little different, or just makes that appeal for BTR more generally?
Yeah, I think for us, what makes us different is almost like an extreme dedication to discipline to our product, right? We just will not kind of stray from that. And if we can't execute in a Avilla Homes community, at least as we define it, we won't do it.
Okay.
And I think that is a little bit unusual in the market, at least from what I see. I don't really see anyone else executing in that way. There's a lot of kind of like, we do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of townhome and a little bit of single family, et cetera. I don't think it's a bad idea, by the way. We've talked about like the master plan rental community.
Yeah.
That has different product types, right? But I don't think it's a bad idea.
Actual master plan, but all BTR.
Yeah. That could be interesting, right? Yeah. I think that could be something that with the right group could be executed. Maybe bring in different rental groups, or maybe you have try and do it as one group. I mean, I think we can take education from the master plans that have been particularly successful are usually by a master developer who brings in different groups that are good at doing different things. So that might be the answer to that question. I think that, but I think there's other secret to BTR, and I get a lot of credit to the single family rental groups, is they've really figured out how to serve disparate houses and provide them with great maintenance, a great experience in their homes. And you can now rent a beautiful home in a suburban market, fully maintained, with a institutional quality landlord, which some people might, that obviously that some people don't like that, right? They're like, oh, it's like, but if you're the renter, right, you're probably getting a lot better experience than maybe some random landlord who, maybe lives there, maybe doesn't, maybe cares, maybe doesn't, right? They probably don't care about their Google reviews if they're an individual owner of homes, but I think that they really put the investment in to take care of their customers. And I think that's what's really changed that part of the business. BTR SFR is that's why it's so desirable now, because you've really figured out the maintenance and how to give them a good renter experience.
Let's wrap up with a couple of questions on tenants, your tenant profile. Let's start with you've touched on it a few times now in little bits and pieces. Let's coalesce it and bring it together. But give me a sort of description of your demo for your typical renter profile.
I would say we have 4 core segments. The largest of it being under 35. Under 35 average household income. Well, under 35, I'll kind of go into the incomes, et cetera, at the end. Under 35, young professionals. They're pretty mobile, right? It's a lifestyle choice. They don't want to buy a home yet because they maybe don't want to settle down. They don't know exactly where they're going to end up. Of that, about 15% of the 50% is people who themselves couldn't afford to rent from us, but their parents are helping subsidize their rental, and maybe their parents are doing that or someone is doing that for them, most likely their parents, because they want their children to be able to live close to them and don't want them to live in the house, et cetera. So that's our biggest segment. Then the next biggest segment is our kind of medium income, 35 to 55. So those are household incomes between between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. Usually life transition. That's about 20% of our segment. So they're starting a new job or new career. Maybe they got divorced or something's changing in their life. So that's kind of a big part of our segment. Then there's a smaller part of our segment that we are like 35 to 55 high income households. So 100,000 to 200,000 a year household income. Those are folks that are just choosing to rent, right? It just fits their lifestyle. Again, maybe they're professionals that just are maybe they're transitioning to a house. And then the last segment is 55 plus, active adult, downsizing typically, they're just, hey, kids are out of the house. I don't need 3,500 square feet or 3,000 square feet anymore. I like the idea of having fully maintenance free. If you think about the Avilla product, it's perfect for aging in place, right? Single story, detached, brand new, fully maintained, has amenities, et cetera, et cetera. If that's the lifestyle you're going for, it's a perfect fit. That's maybe another plus or minus 20% of our residents. So that's really our demographics. It's been broadening. It used to be pretty much that 25 to 35 demographic. That was the lion's share of our residents. And over time, it's broadening out a little bit, I think, as the product becomes something that people recognize as a viable option, right? So
let's tease out 2 of those and wrap up with those of what you just said. One is the 55 plus, and I'll ask that first. And the next one is that want to rent versus quote unquote have to rent. So 55 plus, big part of your profile. Do you ever see yourself doing literal 55 plus BTR communities?
And you're hitting on all our big strategic discussion points.
That's my job.
So I think we talk about that all the time. The challenge, again, if I was to do that, I would want to start at the beginning and do some demographic studies of like where in our markets have we seen, a lot of maybe what projects have seen more 55 plus. Here's something interesting. We did a project in Phoenix right outside the gates of Sun City Grand, right? The OG active adult community done by Del Webb, probably in the, I don't know, 80s, something like that, maybe earlier. we thought going to be filled with people who want to get out of their home in Sun City Grand, because the homes are a little bit older and we'll have a much higher demographic in the 55 plus. Completely wrong. Did not happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way I think about it is, if you go to an active adult, if you target that active adult, they're going to be a little bit more price sensitive, right? Because they're going to be like, listen, I'm on a fixed income.
Yeah.
I can afford X. And so you're going to have less elasticity in your ability to raise rents. And then they're going to be stickier. That'll be good, right? They'll be stickier because they're not going to want to move as much as maybe a younger cohort. But then you're also going to have, it's going to be slower. Like the decision-making process, the leasing is going to be slower, right? And so you're probably not going to lease up as quickly, and you've got a smaller market, right? I mean, that's just 20% of our residents are coming from active adult. Do you get you're trying to capture a lot more of that 20%. So we've talked about it, never really executed it. That's probably a 10 years from now discussion, not a now. And we've had many times where, again, this gets back to our discipline, where we've been going through a zoning case and the jurisdiction has said, we don't like your product for kind of the masses, but if you make it just restricted to active adult, we'll give you the zoning approval. Yeah. Well, the problem is I didn't pick that property because it was a great active adult community. It was because it was a great Avilla, community. And so now we have to go back to the drawing board and say, well, is this even a good location to do an active adult community? Which typically, we just don't.
My guess is it would draw from a more regional footprint in terms of that renter profile. Historically, right? Renter usually draws from a smaller footprint than for sale. Maybe 55 plus draws from a bigger bigger footprint. But your product is perfect as is. Low maintenance, single story. It's a great product for that renter already.
Yeah.
So
maybe you do it. Maybe if you're doing it strategically, you would say, we're going to go a little further out, right? We're going to look for golf communities.
Yeah.
A little further out, because that resident doesn't care if they can get to downtown or wherever they, baseball game or whatever. You go a little further out, you try and get pieces on golf courses. You're going to lease up a little bit slower, but you're going to have a really sticky resident, and you build your model around that. I think it could totally work. And I tell people this all the time. There are a million ways you could build this product for different segments that would work. You could do it in the Midwest. People ask me that all the time. Could you do this absolutely. You could do it in the Midwest. It's just, we're not going to do it.
Well,
but somebody could, right?
Free advice. Make sure your leasing office has a liquor license. I can't stress that enough. That would be how you differentiate yourself.
There you go. Yeah, put a little bar, and you'd have to. And listen, for that segment, you'd have to have, I think, in my opinion, some kind of clubhouse, workout, gathering, card playing area, whatever. Right?
Pickleball.
Yeah, it's just like look at any actual community, you got to have that.
Yeah, and booze, lots and lots of booze,
and a lot of booze. Yeah, a lot of booze.
Last question is that want to rent versus have to rent. You just a minute ago you touched on that a little bit. How does that dynamic work out? I think if you coalesce all those folks together again, what chunk do you think of your renters are renters by choice?
I would say it's a good question. At least 50%.
Yeah.
I would probably say a little more. Our average rent to income ratio is last we looked at, it was like sub 30%. It was like in the high 20s. So we're not seeing kind of stress in terms of how much they're spending on rent.
In Phoenix, in California, you would.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I want to, I think I want to stay. The number 30% is spinning around in my head, and I don't know why, but I think that's probably the number of our residents who would say that they may be looking to buy a house sometime in the future. I mean, I think buying a home is aspirational, and some people, even if they never do buy a house, they probably would, in their minds, they would like to someday have a house, but it may not be practical for their lifestyle.
Yeah.
If you're moving all the time, you don't want to do that.
Exactly. And so some of those folks some of those chunk, you're right, I can't afford a house, so I'm going to rent, but which I would almost put in the maybe need to rent, quote unquote. But a lot of those folks, like you said, they're testing the neighborhood. What are some of the motivations for that true, I want to rent, I could buy, but I want to rent?
Yeah. I think those are the folks that are usually in our slightly more infill locations.
Okay.
Right. Because they want to have that access to things versus if we build next to a really nice single family master plan, you see a lot more turnover of people like renting from us until their home's completed.
Yeah.
And then they move into their home. We saw that in North Texas in one of our projects. So it does vary project by project, but I think that most of them, and then I think on the flip side, right, I can't tell you how many young people that I talked to who have bought a house and said, like, I had no idea how much time I would spend maintaining my house. I'm so sick of doing maintenance on my house.
Literally,
right?
my follow-up question was, well, how many of those folks are just, I don't want the hassles of
Yeah.
ownership? I'm just,
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that
yeah.
they came up with, right? And they had to learn how to do. I grew up on a farm, right? My wife is like, she's always says she's spoiled because I know how to fix everything, but that's not the world today, right? And every weekend that I spend working on fixing my irrigation, I am even more compelled by the rental lifestyle.
Yes. Let alone the folks who have like lawn mower. No, I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, exactly.
Which exist. I'm one of them. I'm not going to lie. So, Josh, thank you so much for coming on. This has
Yeah,
been
Dean, this has been fun.
We love to look at the BTR world. You guys are the biggest, so it's great to have you on finally.
I appreciate it. No, it's been a lot of fun, and appreciate all the work you guys do with us. You're one of our key advisors, so really appreciate it.
Thank you for that, and we're happy to do it. This has been Dean Worley for the New Home Insights podcast. We will check in again with you in a couple of weeks. Since you forgot to hit the stop button, I'm going to take a second to tell you about our weekly Building Market Intelligence newsletter. Over 40,000 smart folks get these timely takes on the housing market in their inbox every week, and you can too by heading to jbreg.com/subscribe and signing up.